talking to Andrew about that. I was talking to Andrew about this when you left the last hangout. So it's currently 2020 in Football Manager. I'm at Dortmund still. It's my 5th season. I tried to leave in the summer, but they wouldn't waive my manager compensation fee. And the club I wanted to go to couldn't afford it, so that move kind of broke down for me.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it was Marseille. They
perpetually banked.
Yeah, they were having financial problems. I wanted to rebuild them. But Arsene Wenger's contract expires in 2021 in this Football Manager. So I'm thinking I leave Dortmund in the summer for Arsenal. It's under my belt, and who knows what follows that.
Love it. All right, we're going to podcast now.
Okay.
Mute ourselves. We go live in 5, 4, 2. What's going on, everybody? My name is Jack Kelly, host of Point to the Spot, a U.S.-based podcast focused on the world of football. I am returning today to restore some order to this podcast. It got a little wild last time out when I was not around. Joining me today, as always, is my entirely bonkers friend, Reed Hammond. Reed, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a crazy week.
Do you care to elaborate?
Just the whole student thing. University takes its toll.
Yeah, being a uni student isn't always fun. And of course, also joining the show today is a future presidential candidate, Ball for Prez 2020, Andrew Ball. Andrew, how are you?
I'm good. I'm busy as well. I have traded in my soccer journalism skills this week for my political journalism skills. We have a budget in Wisconsin that has just been announced, so.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on. Today's episode, guys, is going to be a little bit on the short side. We are actually only going to have 2 halves for once, even though we often misspeak and say that we are moving on to the second half of the show. And we felt that it was appropriate to take this first part of the show to discuss a topic that is close to home in some sense, as it is in the United States. And we wanted to look at the 12 cities, 12 ownership groups, I suppose is how you could define them, that have submitted an application, I guess, for MLS expansion. Really quick, just to run through the list so you have a good idea of the 12 cities. It's Charlotte, Nashville, Indianapolis, Detroit, Phoenix, Raleigh, San Antonio, Sacramento, Cincinnati, Tampa Bay / St. Petersburg, of course, it's the Rowdies franchise, San Diego, and those are the 12. So I guess we'll turn it over to expansion buff himself, Andrew Ball, to get his thoughts about what he thinks the best market is and where he thinks that this is actually going to end up going.
First, a little background. Obviously, MLS is going to theoretically have 2 sides joining in the next couple of years. LAFC, which will actually join, and they'll join in 2018, and then David Beckham FC in Miami, which may or may not ever get over the line. And so this round of expansion will be for kind of the next round of there'll be 4 more coming, I think the goal is by 2022 to have them all in place, potentially a longer timeline depending on who's selected, what their stadium plans are, stuff like that. And there's been a bit of drama because one of the front runners for one of the spots, Sacramento Republic, on the day that the bids were due to be submitted, it was noted that branding on the Sacramento bid. And this is a big deal because one of the big appeals of Sacramento is that they have built a very strong, very rabid fan base for their USL team, Sacramento Republic. Eagle, who is a business honcho in Sacramento and kind of has been spearheading the bid from a business perspective, tiffed with the football people with the Republic. That has allegedly been patched up now. doubt on what was kind of thought to be a done deal, and that's bringing soccer to Sacramento. After that, St. Louis is kind of the next logical place to go. They have sorted out some issues with stadium funding. The new governor of Missouri, a Republican governor, does not want to use public state money to finance the stadium. So they're going to have to get creative at the city level. There will be a referendum, I believe, in April on whether or not to use city money to finance the stadium, which is a big boost for that bid because there was question about whether to even make it on the ballot in April. But St. Louis, with a very strong soccer tradition, one Jack Kelly has attended a St. Louis FC match, the inaugural St. Louis FC match, right, Jack?
Yes, their inaugural home match. It was a blast. 4,000 people in attendance, 4,000 to 5,000 in there. Currently not the biggest of stadiums because they play in USL, but the St. Louligans, as they call them, which is their bona fide ultras section, is a lot of fun. Let off some fun smoke bombs when St. Louis grabbed a goal. So it's a good atmosphere. St. Louis is a little soccer crazy.
They have great development pedigree with youth soccer, and also a strong Bosnian heritage from bringing in refugees during the crisis there. And they also just lost the Rams, so there's definitely a willingness to kind of fill that sports void with something, and a soccer team is very logical. And then after that, it's kind of a free-for-all. You have a mix of very established USL markets like Cincinnati, which put in a very strong year last year, selling out Nippert Stadium, which is where the University of Cincinnati football team plays. It's a huge stadium, which is pretty incredible. You have Detroit, which does not have a very long pedigree at the top levels, but has a NPSL team, Detroit City, which does incredibly well. You have San Diego.
Michigan also has the most registered youth soccer players in the country. Fun fact.
I did not know that. There you go.
Yeah, so that's a big thing for their bid, because the sport is only going to become more popular within the state. So sorry, continue.
No, that's a good point. Definitely something that kind of like underscores their bid, and the reason to have soccer in Detroit. You have San Diego, which does not currently have a professional team, unless you count Tijuana, which is essentially for San Diego. And you have Nashville, who's going to get a USL team in a couple years, but does not also have too much of a pedigree aside from some U.S. men's national team friendlies. So anyway, I will throw it back to you guys. Jack and Reed, you're Don Garber. Don Garber has retired, and we are now appointing you MLS commissioner. What 4 markets do you choose to have expansion? And then I would like to add my 2 cents after you guys are done.
Well, I'll spearhead this, and then we'll get Reed's thoughts right away. Don't worry, Reed, we haven't forgotten about you. My number 1 so far, I think, you see, this is a tough choice for me personally. Obviously, I've experienced how soccer crazy St. Louis is, and obviously it's a great atmosphere down there. Cincinnati, I think they set the U.S. record, including MLS clubs, for most people in attendance at a single season game. For like a domestic league match, obviously the national team draws more. As a 3rd division team last year, FC Cincinnati fans are insane. They sell Nippert out all the time, and that's especially enticing because I'm sure that they could settle on a deal with the University of Cincinnati so that they could just use the stadium, so they're right there ready to go with facilities already. Cincinnati are my 2 big ones. Another one that I like a lot is Tampa Bay. I know it's weird thinking that we should have another club in Florida and an aging market, if you will. I mean, Tampa Bay is not exactly a young person's town. But I do think the Rowdies is a good organization. It kind of is the sole team that kept NASL afloat over the last few seasons. They have great fans, good media people, a solid team. I mean, on the field is not disappointing, and their stadium looks sweet right there on the ocean.
The rendering of that stadium looks awesome.
Yeah, that stadium looks so cool, the rendering. I think Sacramento is a natural draw. My only issue with it is that it would be the 4th MLS side in California, given California is, our largest state population-wise. So I can see, especially because there's already a developed market for it there. I think that'll be harder to do. Obviously, you saw how Don Gardner was so much more interested in getting LAFC than giving Sacramento their bid. So I think that's a little bit interesting. Other markets that I think are confusing, San Diego would be terrible sports town. I think the Carolinas would also not be very good.
Really?
The cities that applied, I don't think would be very good.
Okay.
I think if a city like Charleston came in and tried to get one, I think it would be great because the Battery are hugely popular in that market. And Railhawks now, North Carolina FC, never draws, and there's a reason they were bankrupt, so I don't think it's a great market. But yeah, I guess my four would be Cincinnati and Sacramento, just because I think, the Republic fans deserve to have it. And so I guess that's kind of the natural four teams. Reed, what are your thoughts about this?
Sorry. Yeah, my four. I have a three fast, three easy picks, and then the fourth one I'm still hesitant on. To go in this order: Indy, St. Louis, Raleigh, Cincinnati. The Indianapolis bid is led by the Indy 11 team, which, interestingly enough, was founded and spearheaded by the same mind who founded the Chicago Fire. He's done a lot. He's done a lot of work in Midwest soccer development. He's a great guy.
That being Peter Wilt.
Yes. Sorry.
He also is just he's the man basically behind the Chicago NASL team that will be joining the league, they think, in the next 2 seasons. Continue.
Yeah. Really a stand-up guy. Done a lot. He's one of those names that really did a lot of ground floor work in American soccer that won't really go down in the books, despite it probably should. And then I'm going to say Indy, then I'm going to say St. Louis, because I think they're really ready for it. I think it's especially with that, because they just have a little Bosnia there that just produces players like nobody's business. Like, I remember a couple years ago, I couldn't quite find his name, but there was a young kid who decided to play for the Bosnian national team ahead of the United States. It was another one of those like Jurgen Klinsmann half and half shots that we had, but.
Mm-hmm.
And then Raleigh, because Raleigh is actually a really interesting area for like the next 10 years. It's in the middle of a tech bubble. It's going really well. It's a very young area with a lot of disposable income and angst, I would say. So I think North Carolina FC, despite having immediate trouble and tumultuosity, has a really bright and prosperous future. Especially, it's a beautiful part of the country, and the Railhawks have done well enough. They've been around.
I think it's worth noting that the growth prospect is a big one, because we're not talking about putting a team there next year or year after. We're talking about 5 years from now.
That's true.
What is the city going to look like? So it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Not that like anything that anyone has said is wrong.
Andrew's just saying, like always, Jack, you are wrong and I'm right. Always.
I do see your point with the Raleigh as an up-and-coming city.
I'm Beyonce always.
I just think that, I don't know, traditionally soccer, and yes, there are the exceptions. FC Dallas is obviously hugely popular, but there's not too many teams.
Totally unpopular. They're like last in attendance.
That's my point. Like teams, MLS franchises especially, struggle in these more like football-crazed, naturally southern parts of the country.
But North Carolina,
and I mean American football. That's true. Especially, but you never know.
That's true. Sorry, Reed. What's your fourth?
So wait. What is your fourth?
Yeah, if I could crack on, thanks very much. And I want to give it to Tampa Bay. It's not, because they've done so much work for the sport, and Deuce played there recently. Joe Cole plays there. So, they're kind of the cult hero, but you really got to give it to San Diego.
Joe Cole?
Or Sacramento, rather. You really got to give it to Sacramento, rather. They have a really good infrastructure. California has the population to support it, and there really isn't a part of there really isn't a team that close to Central California yet. And I think it's another relatively untapped market in an area of the country that's going to continue to see growth no matter what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Sacramento is an up-and-coming sports town. Obviously, they showed very passionately with their NBA franchise, the Kings, how they did not want the franchise to be pulled from the city, and they actually won that battle. So I think sports fans there, as in any city, really, they care about their teams a lot. And I think getting a team, and I think they care about the Republic a lot already. And they're still kind of stuck in this world where they're not relevant in terms of competitiveness.
Well, I will.
Yeah,
I
go
will
ahead,
jump in
Andrew.
with my 4, if that's all right. So I think evidence suggests, for people in the know, that MLS will add a team in California. It's just a matter of where. And part of the reason why the turmoil surrounding Sacramento's bid was so disconcerting for people there is because Don Garber does not want to be in Sacramento. He wants to be in San Diego. The thing is, the Republic have just absolutely blown every observer away with the quality of soccer culture in their city, that they've essentially forced MLS to come there. And really the fractured bid for the week or so that it was not a good look. That being said, I think they're unified now. I think they're going to, like divorced parents or parents having troubles, they're not going to divorce for the sake of the kids. They want to get this across the line. And actually, I think if we were building MLS from scratch today, we would not have a team in San Jose. We would put a team instead in Sacramento. So I think California can support it. They have the population. All the major companies in Sacramento, I think, are really on board with this bid, which is big because they don't have a Fortune 500 company there for sponsorship reasons. The stadium rendering is beautiful in the Rail Yard district of Sacramento. So I think that should be one. St. Louis, I think I agree with both of you, is a must-do for MLS. It's been on their wish list for a while. Great stadium proposal, I think, in the kind of by Busch Stadium and the Scottrade Center and whatever the hell the train station is in St. Louis. Great fans, great tradition. I would really be excited to see rivalries with Kansas City and Chicago. I think you could do a cool like Cascadia Cup like thing with those 3 clubs. That would be a lot of fun. Although one team's in the West.
The California Cup.
Yeah, something
Could
like
be fun.
that. I think, or Fire and Brimstone Cup. It's cool to have natural rivalries, and Sacramento would have those, and St. Louis would have those. I think.
Yeah, I don't understand why Chicago's natural rival is Dallas. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there will be a natural born
90s MLS.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they were big. The Fire did throw down against the Bird multiple times in the first few seasons that they were in the league and the playoffs. So a little bit there. I think there will be a natural rivalry with Minnesota United, though, for Chicago, because, it's a way.
Or even those 4 clubs, because that'd be cool.
Yeah, it could be fun. I think
the regional thing there.
they could. Yeah, we could see something along the lines too, because it is American sport and they love to do things like other leagues where they go back to their original model and things are broken. Instead of 2 conferences, you have, it's the Central Division, Eastern Division. You know what I mean? Where you break it down into.
I could see them breaking them into 3 divisions. When we get to 28 of, or even 4 divisions.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting beast.
I do actually disagree with you, Jack, on one thing, though. I think that MLS must be in the Carolinas in some form. I think it is one of the soccer-rich parts of the country, both in terms of development. I mean, Duke, North Carolina, Wake Forest have all won more men's and women's national titles, I think, than pretty much any other programs in the country. The women's team does very well in, for instance, in Cary. And actually, North Carolina FC is getting a women's team, which I think will do very well. You did point out the Railhawks didn't kill in terms of attendance in NASL, but I mean, I think, going to MLS and also where you talked about the demographic and population changes that will take place in that region. It's a very affluent area, a very young area kind of thing. 2 signs of populations that have done well. actually, to me, the biggest hurdle for that is whether or not North Carolina ever gets around to repealing their discriminatory transgender bill, which may or may not happen soon, because that has really hurt their economic and sports growth. So
No,
I don't know
absolutely.
if MLS will take that into account, but
I think they will. I mean, look how big of a thing that is for MLS. Look at Orlando City and all the support the league gave them with their special honorary seats for the victims that were killed in the Pulse nightclub shooting. I think that's an interesting point. That law has hurt the Carolinas. Obviously, the NBA All-Star Game was pulled from Charlotte this year and moved to New Orleans because of it. So I do think that is an interesting point. Anybody have anything else they want to add on to this? Yeah, go ahead.
And then my point real quick. I think if Detroit can prove that they will bring the support from Detroit City over to an MLS side, I know there are some Detroit City supporters who, in theory, want nothing to do with MLS, which is all well and good. But when MLS actually comes calling, their tune might change. If they can prove that will happen, I think the support would be phenomenal. I think it would be awesome to have another team in the Midwest, like you said. Michigan is I think people forget how big the state of Michigan is in terms of its economy and apparently its soccer development, which I didn't quite realize. It's Detroit, I think, will be changing for the better. I think there's a stereotype now that Detroit is kind of a hellhole, but I think it's revitalizing in ways that really would benefit MLS and would really behoove an MLS side. So, and if they can't prove that, then you would look at, I think Cincinnati would be a really cool option. Natural rivalry with Columbus. And then, Jack, you talked about how awesome they've done in fan support. I'd really love to go to an FC Cincinnati game. I'm just going to put a plug in for myself. I applied for a job at the Cincinnati Enquirer. If you guys are listening to this podcast, please hire me. I need a job.
Well, I guess it is at this point that we will throw it out to you all, the listeners. What cities, what markets would you like to see MLS expand into when they move to 28 teams over the next few seasons? Obviously, there's not a set timetable for any of these clubs to be joining the league, but it is fun to speculate about. Let us know on Twitter at Point to the Spot. Of course, that's with the number 2 at Point to the Spot. And for now, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to do a very quick preview of this weekend's Premier League fixtures.
Jack
So
has a
stick
plan to
around.
catch. Trying to rush us through this podcast, bro.
That probably isn't going to make it in post. That might be the starting sequence on this beast.
Yeah. Yes. I like.
Jack's
That.
got a plan to crash. Try to rush us through this podcast, bro.
I
That's
fuck
funny.
with that.
I like
I
it.
fuck with that.
Yeah, we can run through these really quick. Some of these games are irrelevant as fuck.
I honestly, besides Spurs, have no idea who's playing this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we're gonna do 6 games. That's because 2 of the top 6 play each other, as in Spurs and Liverpool, and then we'll talk to Reed about West Ham because they're throwing down against West Brom. Their natural rival.
Best of the rest, Derby.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Next most interesting.
We got it. We're doing this preview in like 10 minutes or less.
Because Jack has a plan to catch.
4, 3, 2. Welcome back to the second half. Yes, this is actually the second half of the show, guys. Really, really quick, we're just going to run through some of the big Premier League fixtures for this weekend. Obviously, there are always some snorers. We'll get underway with the early match on Saturday if you are, of course, watching from here in North America. That is Arsenal hosting Hull City at the Emirates. Game kicks off at 6:30 Central Time here in the United States. Overall, I have no expectation for any match that Arsenal plays the rest of the season. I am the true pessimistic Arsenal fan and have become a little bit upset over the last 2 matches. That being said, I'm going to go back on the very words I just said, and I do expect Arsenal to win. They are at home. Hull is obviously a terrible team, despite what Andrew Ball says.
Come on, you Tigers.
I think this is, it could be a statement game. It's one of those ones where if Arsenal struggles and struggles and struggles, Hull very well could snatch a point or all three. But if Arsenal plays with their quality, I do expect them to win, 3-4-5-0, 3-4-5-1.
Be careful, though. They've got confidence after getting some results lately.
I know. That's why I'm treading lightly. Another team that needs to be treading lightly because they did just drop points to the Tigers is Manchester United. They are playing host to Watford this weekend. Watford obviously kind of playing out of their skin, beating Arsenal two times ago out when they were, you know what I mean. I'm sitting in 10th place. We'll turn it over to Reed. Because, I love when he talks about Jose Mourinho. Reed, do tell me, what do you expect out of this match?
Oh, you kind of got to expect them to keep rolling. They're in good form. It's just how long can this form last, and whether or not they can break this 6th place duck. They've been stuck there for a while now, so we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think United fans are going to be overly pleased with the season, and I think dropping points to Watford will feel like a disappointment to them. Moving along, Middlesbrough and Everton face off. Not too much to talk about this one. Stoke and Palace play. Obviously, Palace trying to avoid relegation. Any game with them, we'll see a little bit of desperation. Sunderland and Southampton square off. Southampton travels to the Stadium of Light. Obviously, Sunderland, the Panthers would be looking to get points once again. They find themselves in a little bit of a run of form, still in dead last in the league, so they're going to be looking to get another big result to help them on their mission. And then we'll get to another match and get Reed's thoughts about it. Of course, we have the best of the West Derby, 9th placed West Ham United playing host to 8th placed West Bromwich and Albion. Reed, what do you expect out of this? West Ham is 3 wins on the trot now?
7 of the last 10, actually.
So we'll take that.
Yeah, no, it's they're two teams that are both in good form. Both teams kind of struggle against bigger clubs, but it's either going to be 0-0 or 7-8. Well, there's no in between with this. It's like either nothing will happen, it'll be 0-0, no cards, or it'll be like a broken leg, 3 penalties, and a pitch invasion. It's going to be spectacular. This is one to watch.
This is one of those matches where I wish everybody on the pitch would get sent off, and then in some strange thing, Tony Pulis and Slaven Bilic would have to throw down one-on-one to see who wins the match.
Okay, not one-on-one, but do you guys remember the old school MLS penalty shootouts?
Yes.
Where you throw the ball and you have to chase it and kick it? Yeah. Slaven Bilic would do bits doing that. All right, Tony Pulis is old. I think it's going to be a great match. I think it's going to be very, very exciting, and I think it's going to answer a lot of questions that everyone has about both of these teams, because as good a form they've both been on, there's just results that come up with them that you can't explain away. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Jose Font handles Salomon Rondon, who's a very physical presence, and Jose Font has a history of doing well against players like that. I think it's tilted towards the Hammers because our biggest, I would identify the largest weakness as the fullback situation is very tumultuous, and Aaron Cresswell has been in bad form since his injury, and Sam Byram is not quite where people thought he would be at this point in his career. So it's going to be interesting, and I just don't think West Brom have the peripheral threats to really exploit that failing. So it's going to be interesting. I think you'll see a little bit of James Collins coming on, doing some good man marking. And I stand firm by my prediction of either a 0-0 bore or approximately a 7-8 with a couple crunching tackles.
A natural and true English showdown. Another big one with implications in this Champions League chase and potentially the chase of Chelsea in first place. Tottenham Hotspur travels to Anfield, I do believe, to take on a struggling Liverpool side. Of course, Tottenham is sitting in second on 50 points, 9 back of Chelsea, and Liverpool sitting in obscurity at 46th 13 back of the Blues. Andrew, what are you expecting out of this game? Do you expect a Spurs victory? Do you expect a classic 1-1? What are your thoughts about this, especially with the struggling Liverpool side?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. This is kind of almost a season-defining game for Liverpool. Exactly the same situation they were in playing Manchester City a couple weeks back. So it's kind of funny that we're getting these top 4 teams and what are really make-or-break moments. No Danny Rose, which kind of limits their ability to play a back 3 because Ben Davies just can't really be a wing back. There are 2 teams that play relatively similar styles, both with kind of a high press. Liverpool likes to kind of create chaos a little more going forward. Spurs are more possession oriented and will wear you down. So there's a lot to look for tactically Saturday. I kind of like the Spurs fan of me is conditioned to expect a 1-1 draw. 3 points would be nice. I'm not expecting it going in. But, Liverpool have not shown very good form lately. So if they come out playing like that on Saturday, I think Spurs can beat them. Spurs are also raring, I think, to play a team that is not going to park 11 men behind the ball as their past 2 opponents have. So it will be a definitely more free-flowing game. Should be a fun game for the neutral. I will probably have a heart attack about 15 times on Saturday. So if you don't hear from me, Wild Boys, just, do the pod without me.
Rest in peace, President Ball. We'll move on to Sunday's games then. The early one, if you will. Chelsea travel to the English footballing giants of Burnley. Chelsea with a trip to the Turf Moor, which this is actually a trickier fixture than I think a lot of people are calling for. I do believe Burnley's in 11th place currently, 12th, excuse me, and have been playing pretty well. Andrew, what do you think about Burnley, and do you think that they could take some points off of Chelsea? Obviously, this has big implications for Tottenham's season.
I certainly hope so, and I think that Burnley, the way they've been playing, they've shown that they can nick some points off people. They fell to Watford, but they've looked plucky, shall we say, against some bigger sides this year. I expect Joey Barton and Diego Costa to get into some fisticuffs. I think a pitch invasion, as Reed alluded to, is not out of the question here. Or it'll be a 0-0 or 1-0. Classic Chelsea methodically picking apart a lower table side. So, Chelsea has historically not struggled in these games this season. One would expect that there would be more of the same, but if there is a side that will push them, I think Burnley could do it.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
And Reed has thoughts about the Burnley game he'd like to share with us.
I do. I actually have some pretty scalding hot takes here. No, I really think that if anyone in the Premier League can wind up Diego Costa, it's going to be Joey Barton. I think he's going to get into that man's ear and just wind him up until he pops, which is normally what Diego Costa does. So it'll be fun to watch. Burnley really have just gone the route of, hold out at home, do what we can on the road. I think they have, if I'm not mistaken, like a top 4 record of home results. They're at least they're well, their home record is spectacular. It's unfathomably different than their away record. And I think it's that comfort level and that tactical and organizational steel that they have at home, and the confidence that that Turf Moor brings into those players that really just is going to keep them up, because I don't think a lot of people are looking at them to stay up, but they really do have a good English spine. They've shown a lot since the move from Manchester United a couple seasons ago. So I think they have a chance, especially at home. There's something about them on the road that they just don't feel comfortable with yet. But the team that they've put together there and the management, that the backroom staff as a whole, I think they're a team that you really have to look at for next season, because I don't think this home form is, an outlier. I think if they can just transition that to the road, they could pull a West Brom. They could kind of fill in that role.
That is a very interesting point. Obviously, Joey Barton is a hugely entertaining player to watch, not for his play on the pitch necessarily. I'll get yes or no one-word answers from this match for you. Of course, we have Swansea and Leicester, who are both tied on 21 points, sitting just above the drop zone. Andrew, does Leicester get relegated?
No, but it'll be by the skin of their teeth.
Reed, does Leicester go down?
Yes.
I love it. And then I will round out this weekend's match days. The Monday Night Football game in England, of course, is Bournemouth playing host to Manchester City. Bournemouth struggling lately. Eddie Howe, terrific manager. With the extra time off, we'll have them ready to go. And you heard it here first. Bournemouth 3, Manchester City 1. I do take the Cherries to down the Blues from Manchester.
The cherries will not pop. Is that what you're saying?
The cherries will not pop. Unfortunately, guys, that is all the time that we have for today's show. Reed, where can they find you on social media?
At That One Kid Reed.
And Andrew, where can they find you?
Me at Actual Jack Kelly. If you agree with me, at Andrew BAHL.
Of course, you guys can find me on Twitter at Actual Jack Kelly. As Andrew mentioned, I am actually Jack Kelly. Don't forget to follow the show at Point to the Spot and tweet us your thoughts about today's episode and anything else that we discussed. We love hearing from you all. And don't forget to follow our partners, American EPL Thoughts. You can find them on Twitter at American EPL and online at AmericanEPLThoughts.com. For now, that's all the time that we have. Thank you very much for listening, and until the weekend, take care.